Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. Snapchat and its controversial Snap Maps tool. I'd never thought much about online privacy until it happened to me. I had always been pretty casual about social media, happily sharing photos and updates about my daily life. When I first downloaded Snapchat, it was just another way to keep in touch with friends, to share silly filtered selfies and quick video snippets. I didn't think twice about enabling Snap Map, the feature that shares your real-time location with your friends. It seemed harmless enough, a way to see what people were up to meet up spontaneously if we happened to be in the same area. I added a bunch of friends and acquaintances, not really discriminating between close pals and casual contacts. At first it was fun. I loved seeing my Bitmoji pop up in different locations, loved peeking at my friends' stories to see what they were doing. I got a kick out of the little inside jokes and little hotspot tips we'd share through the map. But then, gradually, I started to notice something odd. There was one Bitmoji that always seemed to be near me, no matter where I went. At first, I figured it must be a coincidence. We must just have similar hangouts and routines. But as the weeks went by, the pattern became harder to ignore. This person, let's call him Alex, started showing up at the same coffee shops and parks I frequented. They'd be there when I arrived and linger after I left, their Bitmoji a constant presence on my screen. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they just lived or worked nearby. But then the messages started coming. Innocuous at first, just little comments about the places I'd been, the things I'd been doing. Hey, saw you were at XYZ Cafe yesterday, how was it? Looks like you had a fun time at the park, loved that spot. I try to keep my responses light and brief, not wanting to encourage too much familiarity. As Alex's messages became more personal and intrusive, I felt my unease grow into full-blown alarm. It was no longer just a matter of them happening to be in the same places as me. They were actively monitoring my every move, noting details about my appearance and interactions that they couldn't possibly know unless they were watching me constantly. Every buzz of my phone sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I dreaded opening each new message, knowing it would be another unwelcome reminder that I was being surveilled, analyzed, picked apart. That's a great new haircut, really suits you. Looks like you had a fun night out with the girls. Love your dress. Each comment felt like a violation, a sinister whisper that I couldn't escape. I became hyper-vigilant about my surroundings, always scanning for a familiar face or figure lurking nearby. I changed my routes, duck into shops or cafes at random, trying to shake any potential tail. But no matter what I did, Alex always seemed to be one step ahead, popping up in my Snap Map like a malevolent ghost. Their messages took on a possessive, almost demanding tone. I didn't see you at your usual coffee spot this morning. Everything okay? You were out late last night. Who were you with? It felt like they were trying to control me, to insert themselves into every aspect of my life. I bristled at the implied ownership, the assumption that I owed them any explanation or accountability. I tried to push back to set firmer boundaries. I'd respond with curt, non-committal messages or not respond at all, but that only seemed to agitate Alex further. Their messages became more frequent, more insistent, tinged with an undercurrent of anger and accusation. It got to the point where I was afraid to open the app, afraid of what fresh intrusion would be waiting for me. I felt like I was being watched constantly, my every move tracked and analyzed. I became paranoid, jumpy, looking over my shoulder wherever I went. I tried blocking Alex, but they just made new accounts, finding new ways to worm into my digital life. I reported them to Snapchat, but nothing seemed to come of it. I felt trapped, violated, and I had no control over my own privacy and safety. The breaking point came when Alex started sending me photos of my own house, my bedroom window. They were grainy and dark, clearly taken at night, but the implication was clear. They knew where I lived, had been watching me in my most intimate spaces. I felt physically sick, violated at a level I had never experienced before. I went to the police, but there was little they could do without concrete threats or physical evidence of stalking. They advised me to keep screenshots to document everything, but warned that cyberstalking cases were notoriously hard to prosecute. I felt helpless, hunted. I deleted my Snapchat account, tightened up security on all my other social media. I changed my routines, started staying with friends, anything to shake the constant feeling of being watched. But even now, months later, I'm still looking over my shoulder. I'm still wary of any new friend requests or followers, still jumpy every time my phone buzzes. Alex may have disappeared from my Snap map, but the scars of that violation linger. I've always been a big fan of Snapchat. I love the silly filters, the effortless way it lets me keep in touch with friends, the little thrill of seeing what snippets of life people choose to share. It's always felt like a fun, lighthearted corner of the internet, a place for jokes and memes and casual connection. At least, that's what I used to think, before the snaps started coming. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon when I got the first one. I was in the middle of a Netflix binge, my phone buzzing with the usual flurry of notifications, when a new username popped up on my Snapchat feed. It wasn't anyone I recognized, just a string of random numbers and letters. Curious, I tapped on the icon to open the snap. It was a photo of a street sign, nondescript and a little blurry. I figured it was just a wrong number situation, someone accidentally adding me instead of a friend with a similar username. I shrugged it off and went back to my show, the strange snap quickly forgotten. But then, a few hours later, it happened again. Same unknown user, different photo. This time it was a picture of a coffee mug, the kind you might see in any generic office break room. Something about it felt vaguely familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on why. Again, I brushed it off as a random mistake. It wasn't until the third snap that a creeping sense of unease started to prickle at the back of my neck. This photo was of a front door, a plain slab of dark wood with a brass knocker. It could have been any door, really, except for the fact that it was mine. I felt my blood run cold as I stared at the image, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Someone had taken a photo of my front door and sent it to me on Snapchat. But who? And why? I racked my brain for any logical explanation. Anyway, this could be a harmless coincidence or prank, but I kept coming up empty. Over the next few days, the snaps kept coming. Each one was of a different place around my house. The mailbox at the end of my driveway, the tree in my backyard, the window of my living room. The photos were always taken from a distance, always a little grainy or out of focus. But there was no mistaking the sight of my own home, the private spaces of my life suddenly put on unsettling display. I started to feel like I was being watched constantly, my every move tracked and documented by some unseen observer. I became paranoid, jumpy, analyzing every shadow and rustle for signs of a lurking presence. I stopped spending time in front of windows, started closing my curtains at all times, as if a few flimsy pieces of fabric could shield me from the invasive gaze of my unknown stalker. I tried to report the snaps to Snapchat, but without any identifying information about the sender, there was little they could do. I even went to the police, but they seemed skeptical, dismissive. Without any explicit threats or physical evidence of stalking. They said it was hard to take action. They told me to keep screenshots, to let them know if the situation escalated, but otherwise their hands were tied. I felt helpless, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every buzz of my phone sent a jolt of fear through my veins. Every unfamiliar creak or groan of my house set my heart racing. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, consumed by a constant gnawing dread. The final straw came on a stormy night, the wind howling through the trees like a mournful wail. I was huddled under my covers, staring blankly at the wall, when my phone buzzed with a new snap. With shaking hands, I'd opened the app, steeling myself for whatever fresh horror awaited me. The photo was dark, grainy, hard to make out at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I felt a scream lodge in my throat, cold terror washing over me in sickening waves. It was a picture of my bedroom window, raindrops streaking the glass, but reflected in the pane, barely visible in murky darkness, was a face. I couldn't make out any features, couldn't tell if it was male or female, young or old. But the eyes, even in the blurry distortion of the rainy glass, I could feel the eyes boring into me, filled with a malevolent hunger that made my skin crawl. I don't remember calling the police, don't remember the frantic minutes that followed the siren wails and flashing lights, and barked orders to come out with my hands up. I just remember the feeling of utter, all-consuming terror, the certainty that my faceless tormentor was there just outside, waiting to make good on the sinister promise of those violating snaps. In the end, they never caught whoever was behind the photos. The snaps stopped coming after that night, the unknown user disappearing as suddenly and mysteriously as they had arrived. But the damage was done. I was left with the shattered remains of my sense of safety, my peace of mind. Even now, months later, I still flinch at the sound of a camera shutter, still feel a flicker of dread every time I open my Snapchat app. I'm hyper-vigilant, always scanning my surroundings for any sign of a threat, any hint that the nightmare might start again. The police never found any leads, any clues to who might have been behind the snaps. The case went cold, just another unsolved mystery in a world full of them. But for me, it will never be over. I'll always carry the scars of those weeks of terror, always wonder if my tormentor is still out there watching and waiting. I've changed all my online passwords, tightened my privacy settings to the highest levels. I've even considered moving, starting over somewhere new where no one knows my name or my face. But I know deep down that there's no real escape, no foolproof way to protect myself from the twisted whims of a faceless stalker. All I can do is keep moving forward, one day at a time. Keep trying to rebuild my sense of safety, my ability to trust. It's a slow process full of setbacks and dark moments when the fear threatens to overwhelm me all over again. Just a random request from some username I didn't recognize. Normally I ignore those, but my curiosity got the better of me this time. I accepted and watched as their first snap loaded. Just a pic of a city street at night, nothing too crazy. A few more came through. A dog playing at the park, someone's messy bedroom. Weird, but whatever, I thought, and went about my day. That is, until the snaps kept coming over the next few days. First just locations around town, then pics that seemed to be taken closer to my usual haunts. My heart skipped a beat when I realized one was from the cafe I stop at every morning before class. By this point, my anxiety was through the roof. Who was this person? How did they know where I went? I considered blocking them, but a paranoid part of me worried that might make them lash out in some way. So I just left it, hoping they would get bored and move on to some other victim. No such luck. The snaps kept coming, getting more and more invasive and unsettling. There were pics from right outside my apartment building, burger wrappers from the place I hit after classes twice a week, and bizarre shots from my favorite running trails taken just minutes after I had been there myself. This was no coincidence. They were definitely tracking and following me. A cold dread gripped my core. I stayed in as much as possible, missing classes and work, terrified they might actually approach me in person. Then one night, it finally happened. A new snap from the same unknown account, causing my phone to buzz with a notification that made my whole body tense up. My heart was pounding out of my chest as I watched it load. There on the screen was an up-close selfie, but not the usual smiling face or random location. This one chilled me to the bone. The person had a dark hooded sweatshirt pulled up low over their face, obscuring most of their features in an eerie shadow. All I could make out were two piercing eyes glaring menacingly straight into the camera lens, as if they were staring right through the screen at me. The look in those eyes was sinister, unblinking, devoid of any humanity. Just cold, calculating malice. I felt like they could see right into my soul. I damn near threw my phone across the room at the sight of that disturbing image. But before I could react further, the screen grab sound played and another snap. Started loading automatically. This one, incredibly, was even more unsettling than the last. It was a shot pointing upwards from ground level, clearly showing the exterior of my own apartment building. More specifically, it seemed to be aimed directly at my unit's window several floors up. They knew exactly where I lived. My entire body went cold with terror. How? How was this possible? This was no longer just some random prank or person sharing strange photos. Whoever was behind this had to be dangerously close, casing my building, potentially watching me through those windows as I moved around inside, thinking I was safe in my home. The sickening realization of just how vulnerable I was made me feel violently ill. With shaking hands, I watched as one final snap rolled in from this mysterious user. This one was initially just a blank black screen, But then faint text began appearing in an ominous bright red font, one word at a time. "I'm watching you. Pay up or else." That's when the screenshots and video recordings started coming through, all from the snaps I had viewed and saved over the past weeks. Proof they had access to my data. My body went numb with terror. Below the video was a demand for $5,000 to be transferred to some shady offshore account, and a warning that if I went to the cops, they would release all my personal information and images across the web for everyone to see. I've been a prisoner in my own home ever since, jumping at every noise, sacrificing all my savings to appease this sick cyberstalker. I'm too afraid of what they might do if I don't pay up. A big part of me knows I should have just gone to the authorities from the moment those location snaps started coming in, but it's too late for that now. All I can do is keep my head down, pay the ransoms, and pray that this virtual nightmare ends soon before my money runs out, or worse. Maybe then I can restart my life, always looking over my shoulder to make sure nobody's following or watching me through their Snapchat lens. Just a regular Wednesday night, chilling at home after a brutal day of classes. I was mindlessly flipping through Snapchat stories, zoning out to the same tired videos of people's nights out or puppies doing something that was apparently adorable, but seemed pretty mundane to me. Then a random request from some username I didn't recognize at all popped up on my feed. I don't know why, but I didn't think much of it and just accepted without hesitating. Huge mistake looking back, but how was I supposed to know it would spiral into a full-blown nightmare? Pretty much instantly after adding them, this person, let's just call them Snapstalker, started blowing up my DMs with a non-stop stream of snaps. Weird, sure, but at first it seemed harmless enough. Just silly memes, pics of them pulling goofy faces, that kind of dumb stuff we all send to hype up our streaks or whatever. I figured if I just ignored them, surely they'd get bored and move on to their next hapless victim. Wrong. Snapstalker did not let up whatsoever, firing snap after snap into my inbox at a dizzying pace. I'm talking dozens upon dozens every hour, rapidly filling up my memories until there was no space left for anything else. That's when the real terror kicked in. These snaps took a hard turn into dark, disturbing territory, almost like they could sense I was getting creeped out and leaned into it. Now, Snapstalker was sending up-close selfies where they contorted their face into these bizarrely ugly expressions, lips agape and eyes bugging out in these unsettling ways. Kind of funny at first in a cringe, what is this weirdo's problem sort of way. But they just didn't stop, rapidly firing snap after snap like a fire hose set on full blast straight into my phone. It went from bemused gawking to straight up anxious dread pretty damn fast as the assault wouldn't let up. Then out of nowhere, a text snap finally came through cutting through the deluge. Send me nudes or else, followed by a grainy video clip that looked suspiciously like it was filmed straight through my apartment window. I damn near threw my phone across the room. How the hell had this person gotten that kind of access without me realizing it? More deranged snaps loaded up almost instantly, doubling down on their vile threats and demands if I refused to start sending them X-rated pics and videos per their digital summons. Suddenly my phone was bombarded with screenshots of my private text convos and social media profiles, hazy video clips recorded while apparently stalking me out in public and God knows what else. It became soul-crushingly clear that Snapstalker had been meticulously gathering all kinds of personal info and compromising material to use as blackmail against me. A sickening violation that made my skin want to crawl right off my body. Those sick eyes didn't miss a single crack or digital crevice they could slither through to meticulously piece together my entire life. I tried every trick in the book to make it stop, blocking, reporting, changing all my damn privacy settings. But Snapstalker was relentless, coming at me with a blistering barrage of new usernames and fresh twisted angles every time I thought I'd finally plugged the leaks springing up everywhere. It got to the point where I almost couldn't bear to open that cursed app on my phone out of sheer dread. I never knew what fresh new horrors would come slithering out of that tiny red notification box to turn my waking life into cinematic psychological torture. Consumed by this digital hell, jumping at every ping, wondering whether it was another threat, another leaked photo of me to add to their smutty blackmail trove. Looking back, blocking or restricting Snapstalker was probably the worst decision I could have made, because that's when they really went nuclear, making good on those sick promises in the ugliest way possible. My most private photos and intimate videos rapidly gained infamy, leaking like sewage overflowing to make the rounds through just about every group chat and social circle I'd ever been adjacent to. Deeply personal conversations and past traumas, my innermost thoughts and vulnerabilities. Snapstalker spared no humiliation in dragging me through the dregs. The professional ramifications alone make me nauseous. Sure, everyone else's identity seems to get stolen and exposed in data breaches these days. But on that shockingly visceral, lurid personal level, where every friend, family member, potential employer sees you at your most raw and compromised, I'm still constantly having to do damage control. One minute I was just some regular person trying to exist, to pursue my passions and live a normal life. The next, I was an international disgrace, memed into oblivion across that cursed app and every other platform under the sun. As Snapstalker's vengeful, cackling digital parasite, gleefully ruining everything in its path. Snapstalker accomplished their sick mission. I was utterly humiliated, exposed for the world to gawk at on a global scale. Some friends instantly turned their backs, my partner understandably freaked and bailed, my family had to watch in silent horror as the leaks kept blistering their way across the web. The trauma haunts me constantly, every time I have to try and clean up some new resurgence years later. I'll never escape that permanent stain on my record, Snapstalker so meticulously crafted and unleashed from the shadows. The real soul-crushing twist of the knife. After having already reduced my existence to cyber rubble, Snapstalker had the audacity to hit me up one final time. Just a single snap, handwritten text on a crumpled piece of loose-leaf paper reading "should have listened," before disappearing into the ether like a sadistic digital demon. Haven't been able to so much as look at that cursed yellow icon since. Can't imagine ever reinstalling Snapchat again, period, after such digitally scorched psyche. And that's probably for the best, considering how the app's whole ecosystem has become a self-perpetuating black hole of chaos and poisonous internet culture in recent years. Doesn't matter either way. I know Snapstalker is still out there somewhere, lying in wait with infinite new identities and attack vectors to pounce on their next hapless target whenever they least expect it. Maybe you'll get a random request from some unknown user sometime down the line, no avatar or context attached. Maybe you'll make that same fateful mistake I did in accepting it. I can only hope that if you find yourself being spiritually doxxed and blackmailed by the latest Snapchat sadist, you'll handle it better than I did. It was just your average Friday night. I was bored, scrolling through Snapchat stories from people out having fun while I killed time before meeting up with friends later. That's when I noticed something off. There was a new story at the top from my own account, but I definitely hadn't posted anything. I tapped to view it and immediately my stomach dropped. It was a super embarrassing selfie from a few years back that I thought I had deleted forever. The kind of cringy pic that could haunt someone if it got into the wrong hands. And now it was publicly visible to every single person I'm connected with on this app. I frantically tried to delete it from my story, but another snap had already posted right after. Then another and another, an endless stream of humiliating photos and videos from my camera roll that I never wanted to see the light of day. Dumb jokes, awkward moments caught on film, you name it. My digital life was being flipped inside out for all to see in the most mortifying way. At first I thought maybe it was just a glitch or my little cousin messing with me. But then a text snap came through from my own account that shut that down real fast. Nice pics, loser. Pay up or your friends see a lot more where that came from. My heart just sank through the floor. This was no joke or prank. Someone had completely hijacked my account and was pulling off a twisted cyber blackmail scheme, holding my private content for ransom using my own account as a hostage. Every fiber of my soul screamed to just delete the app then and there, cut my losses before any more damage. But something stopped me from doing that. The thing is, aside from all those little embarrassing tidbits everyone has stashed away, there were way bigger skeletons in my camera roll's closet that could legitimately ruin my life if exposed. You know the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Messy political rants, scandals from my party days, you get the idea. So stupidly, I took the bait and reached out to this anonymous creep to entertain their demands. They wanted $5,000 wired to some janky offshore account lickety-split, or else the floodgates were gonna open, exposing everything to the world. money I absolutely did not have sitting around. Thus started a cat and mouse game as these freaks just kept on leaking out more and more of my private content each day I didn't pay out. My heart would drop with sheer panic and dread every time that notification came through. I'd tear up watching helplessly as more nuclear-level messed up stuff premiered for everyone I've ever known to gawk in horror. One apocalyptically bad morning, I even had my own mom call me up in tears over some of the more disturbing videos that had made their way onto my story overnight. It was like being repeatedly drenched in buckets of cold humiliation, my entire persona slowly crucified across the internet for sport. The worst part, my Snapchat account was now 100% compromised. I changed the credentials constantly, deleted and reinstalled the app, ran every virus scan under the sun. Nothing worked. These cyber goblins always found a way to wriggle back inside like some invasive parasite. It got to where all I could do was hide away while they systematically dismantled my entire digital life, piece by agonizing piece. I became a shut-in, terrified to even open the app or go outside in case someone saw fresh leaks and judged me. Missed class, missed work, missed out on human interaction period while trying to ride out this nightmare tornado. At one particularly low point, I actually did drain what little savings I'd built up to meet their ransom demands, praying it would make them pack up and leave me alone. Boy, was I so silly. They just demanded more and more and more. I'll never financially recover from getting swindled by those parasites. The paranoia ate away at me like a waking nightmare. So much so that at one point, I developed a disturbing new neurological tic and aversion to even just the color yellow. Anything that could possibly remind me of that cursed app. Yeah, therapy was definitely required to ultimately deprogram from the trauma. To this day, years later, I still feel lingering psychological scars and trust issues stemming from that whole bleak chapter of being digitally assaulted by those anonymous sadists in their extortion campaign. They ultimately nuked every aspect of my life, using my own hijacked social media presence as a conduit for chaos. A small, cynical part of me almost has to hand it to the level of twisted genius behind the psychological warfare, but the rest of me is just disgusted at how a simple app could become such an easily weaponized tool for technological torture in the wrong hands. I don't go on Snapchat anymore, that's for damn sure. It's pretty much ruined for me, tainted by those traumatic events that I still have trouble processing and moving past. The mere sight of that injection icon makes my skin crawl just thinking about what happened. And who knows? Maybe those digital gremlins are still kicking around out there somewhere, impatiently waiting to strike their next unsuspecting target for kicks and profit. So the next time you get a random notification from your own account acting weird, maybe think twice before brushing it off as a glitch or prank. It could be the calm before the storm, the creeping tendrils of your deepest secrets being pried open for exploitation by the Snapchat sadists hiding in the ether. Some lessons you only get one shot to learn the hard way before it's too late. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.